She's here today. She's amazing. Her name is Hydeia, and she's going to have a conversation with Pastor Wesley. And also what we're going to do, after that, we're going to have some questions and answers, a session. So if you have some questions, maybe you know somebody who needs to get tested, maybe you know somebody who's living with HIV or AIDS, or maybe you just want to be a bigger part of the conversation in general, be an advocate for people living with HIV and AIDS. Think of your questions. We'll do that right after this conversation.
Yeah, we have a seat. Thank you. So, this is a big honor for me to know that you sat across from Oprah. I feel like I'm in an Oprah kind of, channeling my inner Oprah. But Hydeia, we want to welcome you to Alfred Street and welcome you to our Come As You Are worship experience even more. I know for your whole life you've been courageous and bold, and God is using you in amazing ways, and we're grateful to have you here with us. So, Alfred Street, help me welcome Hydeia once again as we welcome her.
Thank you.
Wow. Every song Bree just sang kind of set up what we're going to talk about, that God does make a way. Now, when that video came out with Oprah, that was in 1996, and unfortunately, half the people in here were like 3 or 4 when that came out, so everyone may not know the amazing story that you are. When you're asked to talk about yourself, what jumps up? If someone doesn't know who Hydeia is, what are they going to know at the end of this?
Okay, so I'm going to run down my life real quickly. My birth mother was an IV drug user who infected herself with HIV through using drugs, and she was also a prostitute. I was taken away because I was born with drugs in my system, so she was deemed an unfit mother. I was placed in a foster home because at that time I could not be placed up for adoption because I was going through what was called drug withdrawals. I was a baby who was fiending for crack, unfortunately. But that was a blessing because I was placed in okay, I cry every day that ends in Y, so don't even mind me. My foster parents became my adoptive parents. And so when they found out at the age of 3, because my birth mother gave birth to another child, and at that time, that was 1987, and the epidemic was hitting an all-time high. People were dying at an alarming rate. All my young people, you guys remember when swine flu came to the U.S.? Everyone was wearing gloves, and they had a mask, and they were freaking out. Back when the epidemic of AIDS started, people were dropping at an alarming rate. They would become infected, test positive, and just die. So the hysteria back then was 10 times worse. You had people who were getting kicked out of their churches. You had nurses who would refuse to treat patients because they were so afraid of this disease. When I was diagnosed at 3, they said I wouldn't live past the age of 5. So, my adoptive mother, she found out about NIH, the National Institute of Health, which is a research hospital. And basically, she signed me up to be a human guinea pig because, those are her words, because she knew that they would be testing my brain, my heart, my kidney, my liver, just to make sure everything was functioning right while I was taking this medication that they were developing. And so that and God and my family, my support system, that really saved my life. I started speaking out at the age of 6 because a lot of my friends could not tell their grandparents, they could not tell their best friends that they were living with AIDS. And here I had a mother who had a background in civil rights, who was in an interracial marriage, who taught her daughters to be proud Black women. And so when she found out that I had AIDS, she said she was not gonna allow me to keep a secret. Keep it a secret, because when you keep it a secret, it's something that you're ashamed of. It's something that's dirty. And she didn't want me to feel like I had done something wrong, because here I was Black and a woman, and now you're gonna add AIDS onto that. And she wanted me to know that this was something that happened to me, but did not define who I was. So I really started speaking out just to help my friends. Whenever someone disclosed and they got kicked out of school, If you go home tonight, there's a young boy named Ryan White. He was kicked out of his school. He had to sue for the right to go to school. He had a bullet put through his front window. But what you don't know is there was also 1,000 other little kids like him who got kicked out of their schools, whose parents lost their jobs. And so I really started speaking out with my family as a form of activism for everyone to have the same rights.
All right.
Sorry, that was really long.
Oh, no.
Okay.
One of the things we believe as a people of faith is that God works all things together for good, regardless of our circumstances and situations. And one of the things I was teaching this past week is that God often has a way of taking what you've come out of and sending you right back into it. And so, you know, you're a living example of someone that's using your voice and your life as a living testimony to be an advocate for others. And so we want to applaud that courage and that work and that ministry. What are some of the biggest challenges of that, though, in being an advocate? Do you run up on stereotypes? Do you run up on just blatant ignorance? I mean, what do you fight against most?
As an adult, as a child, I think my mom shielded me from a lot of things. She would play it off as a joke. One time we went to see a doctor, and he came in the room as if he was about to perform surgery. And she said, well, what are you gonna do? And he said, I'm gonna take some blood. And so my mom turned to me and said, now if he tried to take you in a spaceship, you scream and yell for my mom. So as a child, I was shielded from a lot of ignorance. As an adult, I missed a lot of school because I was sick. But I wanted to go to high school. I fought to go to high school. I thought I was missing something. Woo. And so when I got to high school, you're still that girl with AIDS. They don't care if you were on 106 in Park. They don't care if you were sitting down with Oprah. Those who are ignorant, you're that girl with AIDS. And so in high school, I dealt with that type of ignorance, but I was short at that time. I'm still short, wait. And I was skinny, but I was a fighter. My mom said I had the Napoleon complex. So you weren't gonna punk me. So I had to grow to be, now I'm not endorsing violence, not at all. But I had to learn to be very strong and to be on my own because for so long I had my family. Thank you. So in high school I dealt with a lot of ignorance. One of my best friends, someone said, this is when, she said, why would you let her be the godmother to your child? Aren't you afraid she'll get AIDS? And my friend said, well, she's not gonna have sex with her. So like, you know, that's really how we have to face ignorance, is to counter it with either putting you on blast or just like laughing it off. And that's really how I learned to deal with so much ignorance, is I just laugh. Now, a lot of my work in the past years has been on social media. And I would post things about wanting to get married or have children. And I just had to step away from social media because we've come so far in advancements of medication. I can get married and have children without passing HIV onto my future. Thank you. I can get married without passing HIV onto my future husband or child, but that's because I know my status and I'm in treatment and in care. So I'm not really that chick you have to worry about. Let me break this down for you. And I get attacked, and people are like, you should never do that, you should never do that to your child. But see, I've been in research, I know the studies. I know people can have kids without passing HIV on. Us in the US, we have the power to eradicate pediatric AIDS. We have that power. But because we have so many people walking around who do not know their status, excuse me, I have allergies, sorry.
So do I.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Me too.
Thank you. Sorry. Excuse me. But because we have so many individuals who are walking around, who are unaware of their status, who are not being tested and not sticking to treatment because they're afraid of somebody knowing their status. They're afraid of somebody seeing them taking their medicine. These are actually the individuals who are infecting others. So, but for me, I had to step away from social media because people forget I'm still a human being, and I can't take all that negativity. And so, that is one of the big things. Like, social media used to be my big platform, but I just had to step away. And I love this. I love going out, meeting people, and working in the community, because for some reason with social media, people get big and bad. And it's just so much ignorance and evil.
Yeah. Everyone can be a bully on the other side of a keypad, right? All right. I'm going to come back to something you said in just a minute, but for many of us, we're totally unaware of advancements in medication, not having been on that side of treatment. Would you mind talking to us a little bit about like what you've seen in advancements? And someone asked me to ask you, how do you live? Like, how is it to have made it when so many people, like you said, were tested quickly and died? So how has medicine advanced, and what are the treatments that you talk of?
So growing up, even if you come up to me in person, you might see I have some scars up here. So I used to have to wear a Hickman and a portacaf. These were tubes that were surgically implanted to like a main vein, because I couldn't take medicine orally at one point in time. I used to have to wear a backpack because the medicine was so toxic and harsh on my body. I developed what was called a hiatal hernia. Then when I was able to take pills orally, I was taking about 30 pills a day. Now, the medications they have, some people are able to take what's called the once-a-day pill, where you just take it for once a day. But because I'm a long-term survivor, what the doctors try to do is, on new medicine, we kind of wait so I don't run out of options. Because while you may see a graph of pills and it looks like a lot, they're actually like brothers and sisters and cousins. So if you have one pill you can't take, you kind of X yourself out of 3 other medications you can't take. So I take 3 pills a day now to treat my HIV, and that's a miracle, because like I said, I used to be on 30 pills. We now have, as I said, we have treatment as prevention. So individuals who do test HIV positive, they try to get them in care as soon as possible, because once you are in treatment, you have less than a 3% chance of actually passing HIV on. And there's studies that have come out for individuals who are undetectable. They have actually not infected anyone else. So the goal is to be undetected, which means there is no viral load of HIV active in your body. You still have HIV, but it's like it's in a cage. So if that makes sense. And we also have, there's PrEP, which they give individuals who may be somebody who may be a sex worker, or if you are in a relationship, a mixed status relationship with someone who is positive. So mixed status means I'm positive, my boyfriend would be negative. I don't have a boyfriend, but I'm just using that example.
This is CAYA, right? We get there.
He could take a pill that will prevent him from becoming HIV infected. So there's so much treatment and prevention and advancements that have been made.
As a pastor, one of the things I joyfully and unfortunately have to do are deal with people who deal with chronic illness. And, you know, I hear people like with lupus and the pain that they deal with, and certain seasons of life, and those who are dealing with dialysis and just the chronic treatments. So one, we're glad to know that medicine's advanced and you're down from 30 to 3. But do you remember like what the worst day was? Is there any physical pains that are associated with having HIV and AIDS? Do you remember like just the worst period of your life with this?
I don't remember too much because the virus went into my brain, so I have a bad memory. I sometimes have a speech impediment. My speech is affected. But what I do know is I spent Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's all in the hospital at one time. I coded blue 3 times, which means you clinically died and the doctors have brought you back to life. So I've had times where my family's had to fly out to the hospital to say their goodbyes. Thank God I'm still here today. And I've had chickenpox more than once. I've had it like 3 times, if not more. You're supposed to have chickenpox once, and so I have scars and I've had shingles. Those are the things that are kind of annoying and irritating because then you have to tell your friends, oh, if so-and-so has a cold, your child, don't bring him over. Oh, he has chickenpox, I cannot see him. So that's kind of the small irritations, but other than that, I haven't been in the hospital majorly. Like sometimes, maybe once a year, I can get pneumonia. But other than that, I'm doing really well. And people are living with HIV and AIDS, and they're doing really well, very healthy. So people are not becoming as sick as they used to. We're living longer. Unfortunately, now people can go up to 10 years without showing any major symptoms of having HIV or AIDS. And that's really, it's good, but it's also kind of dangerous because it gives you the illusion that you're not sick, that you're doing really well. And so people can become lackadaisical in taking their medicine because they get this like Hercules complex, and then you'll get sick and it will remind you still have a virus that's living in you.
Wow. So you did mention a minute ago about not having a boyfriend. And in CAYA, about 90% of what we talk about usually boils down to relationships at some level. So talk to us about dating. So let's say you and I meet. You're a beautiful young lady, by the way. I'd like to acknowledge that. We definitely acknowledge that. That's probably the only time I can say that and not get in a whole lot of trouble. So thank you all. So let's say we meet.
Mm-hmm.
How awkward is it? At what point, I don't know you, I haven't seen you on television. At what point do you share with me your status, and what has typically been the response that you get?
Well, I don't date right now because I have so much that I'm focusing on, and I just haven't met anyone really worthy that I want to disclose to, because it's a big ordeal to disclose because you deal with rejection so much. So you have to be a really awesome man, first of all, for me. And I have a third date rule. If you don't Google me by then, I will break it down on the third date. And what I do is I ask you about, are you involved in community work? Because a man, for me, and this is just how I gauge it, if you're into your shoes, your rims, and your cars, you're probably not going to be, your mind's not going to be open enough to date a woman like me. But
there's a feminine aura in here that. Okay.
It has to be somebody who is open-minded. Their mind can't be very basic, because if your mind is basic, you're going to care about what people have to say. And if you care about what people have to say, you're probably not going to be strong enough to stand by a woman who is public with her status. And this is how I gauge dating. For anyone who may be in the audience who is living with HIV or AIDS, this is personally how I gauge through dating. Because that guy that cares about his clothes and his rims, he's not going to be strong enough when his boys say, oh, you date that girl with AIDS? Are you serious?
That's probably not how they're going to say it, but right. Right, I mean, right. And that goes to the point, you know, of the strength that is necessary. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. But I have a third date rule, and I just will ask you, have you ever been tested for HIV? What are your viewpoints on HIV? Have you ever known someone? And then I kind of gauge it through that way, and then I disclose because I have to. There's no way I can really hide it, because your grandmother might say, I seen her on Oprah. Or, like, I recently wanted to really get to know a guy, so I invited him over and I was cooking for him. And I thought I put everything away. I thought I put all my meds away. I didn't really hide my awards because I'm like, I'm not really gonna hide who I am. But I left a gel cap out, and I had modeled for a hair care company. And he said, you have HIV? So I was like, yeah. He was like, well, I have a cut and I washed my hand in your sink. Will I get HIV? And I'm like, oh, bye, baby. No. But, I mean, a third date rule for me. That's what I want.
I'm glad to also hear your awareness of your status and desiring for motherhood and marriage. I assume that, are those visions that you still hold on to?
I don't know. Honestly, there's a point where I said, I want to have kids, yes, but as I get older, I mean, if I meet the right man and I start to date, ask me that, or if I get engaged and married, but now I'm a single woman who's on her own and I'm paying my bills, so for me, a child does not fit into my life. And that's the viewpoint that I have, but if God brings a man into my life and we get married and have children, I would be willing, but right now, no.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about your social life. I mean, we don't just want to focus on the HIV and the AIDS. What do you do? What do you do to have fun? I mean, and on those good days when obviously you're not battling chicken pox or anything else like that, what does Hydeia like to do?
I spend a lot of time with my family. I'm really a homebody, so sometimes I'll cook and I'll have get-togethers at my house, but I'm such a homebody. I'll go to the movies. I live a really low-key life when I'm back home, so if someone's having an event, I'll go to their event to support, but other than that, I'm at the movies or with my family, very low-key.
Mm-hmm. What's one of the biggest blessings of your life right now? That you see the Lord going and you go, thank you, Lord. That's what I've been waiting on.
You know what? I've had to take some time off because I deal with depression. And so, I deal with depression. So right now, the blessing in my life is God giving me the energy to get back out there and to... So that is the biggest blessing that I can be thankful for.
You are a poster girl for the very two things black churches don't like to deal with. Mental health and sexuality. And we try to broach them both here within our church family, and as one who's been diagnosed with clinical depression and had to pray my way out and through and deal with counselors, I'm grateful for the boldness to just be able to broach that those go kind of hand in hand with you. And when you're done here, we continue to lift you up in prayer because we don't think God's done with you yet, that there's still a lot more that you've got to do. So let me ask you this question. If you're speaking to someone who just found out they're HIV positive, and you probably know the myriad of emotions and fears that they're going through, what do you say to them?
I would let them know it's not a death sentence that it once was. I would tell them that we have awesome medication. Thankfully, as of right now, and this is where you guys have to become involved politically, we still have the Affordable Care Act, because years ago, or a couple years ago, I lost my government assistance before we had the Affordable Care Act because I made too much money. And at that time, insurance companies could deny you because of your status, because you're too costly. And so I would inform them that they have health care now, they have these wonderful medications. I would give them a list of individuals who are positive, but great members of society, like Magic Johnson, Marvelyn Brown, Ray Lewis Thornton. And these might not be names that you are aware of, but these are names of people who have lived 20 plus years with this disease. And so I would give them that information about, you can get married and have children and be in a relationship. So I would try to highlight all the positives, but it's gonna take time to adjust. There's really nothing, there might be keywords that I can say to help people, but it's gonna take time and for them to do the research and to advocate for themselves, for them to be okay with their status.
Yeah. What's the worst case scenario you've seen with someone who found out that they were HIV positive? We've heard of some reckless behavior with those who decide, well, I'm gonna take everyone out with me.
Yeah.
What have you seen on the other side? So we talked about the ignorance and the stereotypes from those who aren't aware. Have you seen any on the other side of those who are infected?
The negative things, and I think we can all see this, especially if we're active on social media. Sometimes you'll see the posts or the videos of someone saying, I infected 100 men, when she doesn't really know if she infected 100 men. She just knows she had sex with 100 men. And I think some people do it for shock factor, and those are really 1% of people who are living with HIV or AIDS. And I think there's more of a mental issue there. If they're mad because they became infected, majority of the people who are infected, they do everything in their power not to pass HIV on. So I want you not to be afraid of those living with HIV or AIDS and think that's everybody. Everyone's not doing that. Many people who become infected actually get into advocacy work or in the field because they don't want other people to become infected. So do not be freaked out by those stories that you see on Facebook because some of them are complete lies. The worst case scenario, actually, I see a lot of positive. I see a lot of kids who they might go through depression, but they snap out of it. They start taking their medicine, they're in care, and they become very active in their community. So I see more positive stories than I do negative. I think from the negative standpoint, we might see individuals who are not supported by their family, they're kicked out, ostracized, and they just won't take their medicine, and so they end up passing away. But we don't have as many people here in the U.S. who are passing away as HIV. We still do lose people, but our numbers have gone down.
I'm gonna do a favor. I'm gonna ask my AV team to get some mics in the aisles in a minute. We're gonna take a few questions in a moment. You spoke a little bit about family. Tell me about the strength of family and support. You know, if you were just mentioning some who were ostracized by their families, but you seem to have had a great family support system. So talk to us a little bit about your family.
My family is very supportive. Whenever I have events in Las Vegas, if they can come out, they do. And yes.
Coming out to Vegas a little bit, we're gonna talk. Right?
Okay. If I'm ever impatient, they come and they spend time with me. They'll bring me food because they know hospital food is horrible. But they're really supportive, and I'm very blessed in that aspect that they always have my back.
Okay, we're grateful for that. I want to take a quick turn before we allow those who may have a few questions, if you want to start making your way to the microphone. So talk a little bit about the role of faith in your life. You know, how does that help, hinder, or, you know, talk to us a little bit about your faith.
I pray. I'm going through a transition, and I don't know what it's called. Is it a spiritual transition? I was involved in a church. I left the church, so I'm trying to find a new home, which, as you know, well, for some people, you know, that's a daunting task because you got to find out where you go. But I pray every day. I probably pray all day long. Sometimes I feel like, you know, to keep calm, to not freak out. I stress and worry, and I have to learn to trust God more. But I pray all day long, and that's really what helps get me through life. And so, and I contribute still being here, that God had, or God has, a purpose for my life. Amen. And I'm very blessed that I was able to take something negative and turn it into something positive. And so, and like right now as a young woman, I'll be 33 next week, and I'm just going through a transition in life, trying to figure out what's the next step. Do I want to keep advocating? What is it that I want to do that's going to make me happy? Because while I'm here today and I'm going to meet so many wonderful people, I do a lot of work. I used to do a lot of work in entertainment. In that world, baby. So I have to figure out if I want to keep doing that. And so I'm in a transition, but I'm thankful for every blessing God has put upon me. And one day people say I will be grateful for my struggle. And so I'm ready for that part, to get through the struggle.
To get through that. On the other side. Next month, we're going to be talking in CAYA about the things people don't like about church. You know, they won't let me call it why I can't stand church, but that's really what I want to call it. But talk to us a little bit about your church experience. You know, you don't necessarily have to name what it was, but what's been your reception in church, positive and negative? Let's start with the negative. What's the worst things?
I don't know how to say this.
Oh, it's CAYA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My family, my mom didn't raise us going to church. It was probably when I was in my 20s that I knew I needed to go to church, find a church, and I ended up in a predominantly white church. And so when the social issues started to happen, you started to see people's colors, unfortunately. And I'm not talking about their skin, I don't know. You see their racist tendencies, that's it. And so that took me away from the church. And I think that also I'm human, and I had some rejections that really made me kind of hard in my heart towards God. And so that unfortunately also took me away from church. But I've prayed through it, worked through it, and now I am revisiting churches. But other than, I think, natural man's downfall, which I should not have allowed to I shouldn't have allowed that to take me from church. Unfortunately, it did. I seen people's faults, and I didn't give them the credit that they're still human, because I'm imperfect. And so that, and being a community activist and being involved and knowing Black Lives Matter, it made me leave the church I was involved in. So
we oftentimes believe that it's not God, but God's representatives that leave such a bad taste in people's mouths. So we pray for you in that quest. If you live here in the D.C. area, we tell you Alfred Street Baptist Church is really more than welcome. More welcome, Joyce. So being human, one of the things I believe is that no one who's truly human leaves this life without a Job experience, a moment where you and God have to have a come to Jesus moment, where you're angry with God and you've got to deal with that. So I heard you talk about your heart being hardened. And in those times of prayer, have you ever found yourself just in full confession being angry with God?
yeah.
You about to say, am I kidding, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I just had to communicate. I just had to talk to him. I felt like what's going on? And I know they say that when God says no, it's a blessing, but you just don't understand it, and you need understanding. And so I've never been mad at God about having AIDS or my status. I know somebody will probably ask, but I've never been mad at my biological mother because I didn't know her struggle. I didn't know what she was going through. She was unaware of her status when she had me. Now, if you ask some of my younger siblings that she had once she knew, their answer could be different. But for me, my mom taught me just not to be mad at her, not to be mad at my status. It's just when you get older, maybe financial stress, and then also just trying to figure out what's next for my life. What do you want me to do? And so.
We're going to take some questions. If there's anyone that has a question, we don't always get this opportunity to have someone of Hydeia status. So we're going to start over here, Cynthia, and then we'll make our way over.
Hello. Hello, I just want to say thank you for being a witness and living through this. I remember when AIDS first came out, my freshman year of high school, our biology teacher took a whole quarter to talk about it and just to see over time how it has progressed. And, as someone who didn't have to really live with it from that perspective, but just being educated and aware. I got to see you at Howard last year when you did the no shame, what was it, the no shame or just living without shame conference.
The stigma conference.
The stigma conference, right. Yeah. And as recently as within the last 3 years, I was at another conference talking about AIDS and healing, and someone who works in it was sharing with me with children now, even today, there are kids where they're treating them and they're not being honest with those children about what they're going through. And I questioned her about it. I'm like, why? Well, I mean, you have to be giving them medicine, and they just know they have other ailments. So what are your thoughts or perspectives about that concept that even as recently as, within the last 3 years, some people are choosing, especially with children, to not be totally honest with them about what they're really.
I think that's a horrible mistake, because I think one of the things that helped me deal with acceptance in myself was that I was aware of my status at a young age. There wasn't a certain age that I found out. it's like being black and being a girl. It was just something I always knew. It was always there. So if you have a child that's growing up unaware of their status, they're going through middle school, they're going through high school, and their life is going to be altered once you tell them. So if you can brace the child when they're younger, it's better, because a child will march to the beat of the parent's drum. And I think because I didn't see my adoptive mom crying and depressed, I didn't grow up crying and depressed. And then also you have to realize that, unfortunately, our young people are having sex at a very young age. And parents, I know a lot of parents say, well, my child would never. And then if you have a child who's positive and they've had sex, maybe they didn't use condoms, hopefully they did, but if you disclose their status to them at a late age, and then they took part in these activities, you've now put that guilt on them because they're afraid that they may have put somebody else's life in danger. So it's better to tell a child as young as possible before they get older.
Yes.
Hi. So when you were on Oprah, I wasn't even born yet. So.
Okay.
Hi. So for my generation, AIDS is actually really different for us because I know like very little about the AIDS epidemic. So my question is, how do you feel the view on AIDS has changed since then to now, especially with young people?
Okay. Well, for young people, I feel that they don't know the seriousness of the disease. They can look at myself and Magic Johnson and they say, oh, well, they look healthy, they're thriving. And I think because people don't look like death or look sick, they think it's just something they could just pop a pill and be okay. While there are advancements, we still want you to be safe. We want you to be aware. We don't want you to think it's a big deal. Everyone gets excited and happy, the older people, about the advancements because we lived through the fear. We lived through losing family members or friends. And so in our minds, we're very much aware, but for young people, I think sometimes they think it's like a cold. It's not that big of a deal. And so what I would encourage young people to do is go home and do some research. Look at the documentaries that have been done, so you know what the reality of HIV and AIDS is. If I can encourage you to do anything, it would just be to watch the videos and the research and the documentaries that have been done so you know. And while I said I have insurance now, we have to talk about the fact that my plan, and it may be cheaper than other people's, but mine is like $700 a month. And then I still have to apply for programs to help me pay for my co-pays on my medicine. If I lose my insurance, some of my pills, it's 4, one can be $750 a month. That's my rent. And that's cheaper in Vegas. The cost of living is cheaper in Vegas. And so if you have $750 plus 3 other ones, you have to know that this is a very expensive disease, a disease that many African Americans cannot afford to have. So we have to make wise choices when it comes to our bodies and our health.
I'll tell you what, I see people lining up, and I want to try to stem it to respect our time. It's not to disrespect anyone at all, but we do want to excellent time. I saw our sister come up to the mic. If they have one more, if you all would let me just take this one more, and then Danny's going to come back, and I want to get us out of here in time for
I'll be around, so if anyone wants to come up and ask me a couple questions before we
You did not mean to say that. You did not. Well, yeah, we'll take another question, then we'll avail ourselves to you afterwards. Okay.
It's actually not a question. It's 2 things that I do want to address, and Pastor, I will do it briefly since you said that. No, I moved to this area in 1986 working with the public health department in Fairfax County. And shortly after I got here, the biggest topic, of course, was HIV/AIDS, which a lot of us were struggling trying to figure out how to work with all of that. Shortly, within about 3 or 4 months, we found out that one of my nephews was HIV positive as a result of having used drugs. And my family went through, you cannot imagine, a whole lot with that. So I really want to applaud this young lady for having the heart, the love, and the courage to do what she's doing, because it's appalling to find out that from 1986, when this really started becoming an issue and the stigma, that we're still talking about stigma today. It's really disgusting that we have not grown past it's a lot of stigma attached to that community, whether it's from getting it the way she got it through her mother, through drugs, through sexual contact. There's still too much stigma, and we have to learn to be much more accepting of each other. The second thing, and I know this is really flipping the script, most of you realize I'm not 30 like a lot of you are, but I'm the chaplain for the church's HIV/AIDS team here. And whether you know it or not, one of the fastest growing populations, especially now, is the senior population, the black senior population in this country. So you may need to go home and have some conversations, seriously, with your parents and some of you with your grandparents.
Yeah.
And do it sensitive, but it's a whole new world and a new day. You know, we're living much longer with better health and everybody exercising and medications and all of that. And people are 60 and 70 and 80 years old and 85, but they're losing their spouses, they're divorcing, but they still want to have relationships with each other. We're getting senior communities where everybody in that community has to be 55 plus. And we're not thinking about this. And when I say we're not thinking, I'm talking, I got Medicare in March, okay? So I'm in that population. We're not thinking about this. And it's a serious consideration. It really is. So maybe you can figure out, you know, at Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, how to talk to them about being thankful for certain things. Thank you.
Come on, Danny. We're going to start making our way towards our exit in the next 5 minutes or so. And then she's been gracious enough to stick around for a little bit. Don't belabor the gift that we have of her presence, if you would. Okay. Danny.
I'm not sure about the Thanksgiving conversation, though. But I do want to second what she said, and I'm glad she brought that up real quick. I had to do a story about the epidemic of STDs within the elderly community. So she is not lying, okay? She is preaching over there. So maybe not Thanksgiving, but have a conversation with your grandparents. First of all, I just want to say, or the elderly people in your life. Your parents. Seriously, have the conversation. You just don't know. I want to share two things with you. When I was married, I am now divorced. That is a hallelujah, not an I'm sorry. Hey, gotta let you know when it's not right also. So I just want to say that every time I would go to the doctor, I would ask to be tested. And my doctor was always confused, and she would say, you know, why are you being tested? You've been in this relationship for how long? I said, you know what? I trust God and I trust me, okay? I don't know what everybody else is doing. And I was right to do so because I am single now for a reason. So I just want to say, first of all, you are black, you are a woman, you are speaking on mental health, and you have HIV. Honey, you are a superhero, okay? Please make some noise, show some love for Hydeia. She is a superhero. Absolutely. You are my superhero, so thank you. I'm sure you hear it a lot, but that is a lot wrapped into one little body, okay? And there's a struggle with each of those. So thank you so much for being here. And Pastor, we have a few questions for you. What made you decide to take on this topic, to tackle this? Because as we've talked about a little bit, HIV and AIDS in the black community and in the church community is taboo. And we just kind of want to know, what did you find in your heart that made this a conversation that was necessary?
I think too often with the real issues of life, we like to hide our head in the sanctified sand and act like it isn't real, and it is. And as a result, People are dying and not living abundantly. I know from personal experience, secrets kill you, and trying to keep secrets kill you, and having to act like you don't have secrets when you come to church makes worship inauthentic. So we need to be real about issues, especially if it helps save lives.
Yeah.
And church, to be relevant and real, can't avoid topics like this. We've got to talk about sexuality. We've got to talk about mental health care. There's nothing wrong with that. The boldness of Christ in his ministry is that he addressed the very taboo topics of his day. And I don't think we're followers of Christ if we decide we just want to come in here and clap hands and say amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you worried at all about any negative feedback? Are you ready to just take it in stride?
At this stage of my life and career, I don't care
Amen.
about
Yes.
about negative feedback. You know, one of the things that is a hallmark of our church is that we're taking some bold stands on some real issues, and we realize that there will be those who probably don't stand with us, and that's fine. I counted, there are 12 doors that lead out of this church, and all of them point in the direction of another church, right?
Right.
So if that's not
Right.
if that's not where you want to be, you know, and that's not to say that we don't care, but if you don't want to be here, there are other places that will probably be more aligned with your philosophy, your social issues, and your theology, but we're going to be bold.
Okay. And absolutely. And from tonight, we had some amazing music. We had a phenomenal testimony. We had some amazing questions. What do you want people to walk out of here and remember or take away from this night?
The living example of what God does, of being able to live with HIV and AIDS, take the stigma off, the stereotype, the fear, and be able to tell that there are people of God who are not afraid to face the real issues of life. And this is what we've been doing for 7 years at CAYA now. And tonight was a big, bold step, and I want to also thank you for helping push us a little bit further out into the waters of courageous Christianity. And that's who we define ourselves to be. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. There's one.